Hey guys, Caleb here with DSLR Video Shooter, and welcome back to another video in my favorite stuff of 2018 series. We've already done a couple videos. You can check those out in the link in the description. Maybe I'll do a playlist for this as well. Essentially, I'm talking about my favorite stuff in different categories from 2018. So we've done one on audio, we've done one on lights, and now we're jumping into lenses. So what I'm going to be doing is starting on the wide end and doing primes, working all the way through the focal ranges, and then I'll talk about a couple zooms that I'm really enjoying for video. All different cameras, doesn't matter. We're going to cover all that stuff. Links to everything will be in the description. Those will be affiliated, so if you use them, we will get a small commission at no additional cost to you, and that is always appreciated. Otherwise, if you like your lenses, check out our guides over at the Academy if you still want to support the channel. With all that out of the way, let's jump in with the wide stuff. We're starting off really wide. We're talking 12 millimeters on a full frame camera f2.8, no distortion. What? This is the Laowa 12 millimeter. We just did a video on it recently. It's phenomenal. It's wildly sharp and it's stupid wide, especially on that full frame. So check out the review to learn more about this guy. By now, tons of you have probably already heard about this guy, the Helios 44-2. I've talked about it a ton in past years. It's a great lens. I have a really cute silver chrome one. I'll try to find this and put this in the description. But a lot of people don't know there are hundreds of other similar lenses from Helios and others over in Russia that are vintage. And one I have right here, and it is probably one of my favorite primes of the year. This is the Mir, M-I-R, 24M, which is a 35 millimeter f2.0. Gorgeous lens. You know those lenses that have that kind of creamy, milky look? It's almost like there's a built-in Black Pro mist filter. This lens is one of those. It is built incredibly well, unlike a lot of these Helios 44-2s. Just a tank of a lens, really fun to use. And f2, not 2.8, but f2, which is pretty rare when it comes to these older 35 millimeter lenses. Jumping up to the 50 millimeter range, another vintage lens that I love is this Pentax 50 millimeter f1.7. Now you'll notice if I close it all the way down here, it is a pretty small kind of pancake style lens, and it looks great. It's got a really nice range, a pretty decent minimum focus distance, something to consider picking up. They don't cost too much, and really like this guy. Our next lens is probably the most expensive on the list, but definitely one to consider if you're a Sony full frame shooter. It is the Zeiss Sony 55 millimeter f1.8. This lens is just phenomenal. If you've watched any reviews on it online, you'll see that people absolutely adore it. Yeah. Favorite lens for Sony full frame by far. And similarly, I'm really enjoying this guy right here, the new-ish Sony 85 millimeter f1.8. So those two lenses together give you some wonderful images on Sony full frame. Autofocus on both is insanely good. This one actually has a programmable button on the side. So if you're doing portrait work on Sony, gotta check it out. Okay, two more primes and then we're jumping over to zoom land. And this next prime is pretty legendary. It's maybe not as popular as some of the other ones we've already talked about, but this is the Jupiter 9. This is an 85 millimeter f2 lens. There are several different versions, but what's cool is it has a non-clicked aperture ring, which is great. And depending on the model you get, this has up to 12 blades in it. So I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but essentially you're going to get perfectly round bokeh at any f-stop because there are no big giant cuts with those blades. So definitely one to check out. Again, it's just got that kind of magical look like some of the other vintage lenses we've talked about. And it's 85 f2, so shallow depth of field is no problem with this. And last but not least, we have this guy. This is the Jupiter, again, 37A. There are tons of different versions of this lens. I've got a couple because I really love it. Really great telephoto kind of prime portrait lens. Again, there are several different models. This one is a 3.5 when it comes to the maximum aperture, another Russian lens, and one to check out if you're looking for telephoto stuff. Okay, moving on to zooms, we're gonna start off with, of course, it had to be on the list, the Sigma 18-35 f1.8. I mean, if you're a YouTuber, you know about this, and it's a great lens. You get the 1.8 at a wide aperture. I found it works great on micro four thirds with a speed booster, even up to the larger 0.64 speed booster. So really loving that look. and it's just a good lens. I wish I had a slightly longer reach at that 1.8, but for around 800 bucks, you really can't go wrong with this. My next favorite lens, and one that I've been using constantly here in 2018, is the new-ish Tamron 28-75 f2.8. You'll notice that I'm lifting up a camera with the lens because this lens has pretty much lived on my a7 III since I got it. The autofocus is incredible. The range is pretty solid, and the size, I mean, look how small this is. It's really compact for that range, and that's why they went with 28-75 instead of doing the more traditional 24-70. But I mean, there's really nothing to dislike about it, and it's around 800 bucks, which is amazing for the money. So if you shoot on an A7 series or full frame E-mount camera, you should definitely be considering this lens because it's kind of a slam dunk. And next up we have these guys. This is a set of zooms from Nikon. These are Nikon AF or ED lenses, and I love them. I actually got these years and years and years ago, back when I was doing freelance video work. I did a lot of, corporate documentary style stuff, and I always ran two of the same cameras, and pretty much these lived on those cameras. So the set is a 28-80 millimeter f2.8 and 80-200 millimeter f2.8. And actually, you're watching this through my 17-35 f2.8. They all kind of have a matching set. They look great together, and you have that huge range from 17 millimeters up to 200. They are slightly larger. The 17-35 is not as bulky as these two, but they're not super duper lightweight, which in the world we live in with all this small mirrorless stuff feels a bit bulky. But these will last forever. And I'm excited to put these to work on the new Nikon Z6, which I will be playing with here before too long. My next favorite lens from this year is not new, but it was new to me in 2018, and that is this, a microscopic 24 millimeter from Pentax. I did a whole video on these Pentax 110 lenses, and they're tiny and really fun to shoot with. They're also really good considering the size and the cost. You can pick these up for pretty affordably. Definitely check out that video because it was a lot of fun, and I love these things. And even though they're so small, they're actually still very usable on most cameras. You can use them with APS-C crop mirrorless cameras as well as Micro Four Thirds. So if that's what you're into, you should seriously consider picking up at least one of these for the novelty and the image quality, which is pretty solid. And last but not least, I'm gonna throw in a tiny zoom for Micro Four Thirds. This is the 12-60 millimeter from Lumix, and what's special about this lens is that range. It's 12-60, which if you translate that into kind of full frame equivalents, we're looking at a 24-120. So really great range. It's not the fastest lens in the world, 3.5 to 5.6, but for pretty much all my B-roll, I'm using this guy because I don't need as much shallow depth of field when it comes to shooting, tabletop B-roll and whatnot. And I have that huge range, getting nice close-ups. It's got a great minimum focus range, or I can jump all the way out, move the camera in, and get a completely different perspective, all with one lens, and I really love this thing. Otherwise, I really do also enjoy the typical 12-35 and 35-100 from Panasonic for just general shooting, but more and more I'm finding myself using adapters with my Panasonic cameras, using speed boosters, and some of the other lenses we just finished talking about. And that's gonna do it for my list of favorite lenses from this year. These are lenses that I've been using here in the studio a ton. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Maybe you picked a couple of things up. Again, I'll link to everything that I can possibly find in the description below. That's gonna wrap this one up. Stay tuned for more videos in this favorite from 2018 series. Hope you guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.